Hi, everyone. Welcome. My name is Christine Augustine, and I am the grad assistant at Health Promotion and Wellness at DePaul. Welcome to Do Not Wait to Get Help, where we provide awareness and resources to our DePaul community. We are here to highlight some stigmas and barriers around seeking services with departments and resources that what students can expect if they can reach out for help. So today we have a special guest from the University Counseling Services, and I am going to bring her up. Hello.
Hello. Hi, Christine.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Thanks for having me. Counseling Services is always happy to get a chance to talk about our services and talk to students.
Yes, thank you so much for being here today. Well, first, feel free to introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name is Stacy. I'm the Assistant Director of the Counseling Center at DePaul, and I've been with the university, I think, 14 years in this capacity.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing. And before I start into the questions, I first would like to ask our attendees to check in. So at the bottom, you see a link, and it will direct you to the registering page to register, to let us know who's watching and who attended. So this will be also provided at the end of this live. So now that we talked a little bit about you, I would like to know more about your office.
Sure. So first of all, so in real life, when we're not all doing virtual campus, we do have two office locations. So we're located down at the Loop, and then we're also our main center, our bigger center, is up at the Lincoln Park campus in the Student Center. So just for future reference, that's where we're located. Counseling Services provides primarily the purpose of our center is to provide mental health and psychological support to students. And of course, the purpose behind that mission is that we know students do academically better when they're not distracted by carrying a lot or having a lot of sort of private burdens that they're not able to sort of process or get help with. So that's the reason that we're there on campus. And maybe I can say a little bit about how our services look right now while we're remote. Would that make sense?
Yeah.
So our services pretty much look the same remotely as they do in person, in the sense that we're still offering our whole range of services that we always have. We're just doing it this way, what we call telehealth. And so the services that we offer primarily at the center are students come and see us for brief individual counseling. Students come and see us for group therapy. We also have what we're calling telereach programming this year. Usually it's called outreach, but those are like drop-in psychoeducational workshops where students don't necessarily come individually or on an ongoing basis, but can just sort of drop in based on the topic that's of interest to them. And then the other primary things we do are crisis management, which essentially means if somebody's in distress and we need to intervene sooner than later, we sort of help to figure out what they need to be supported in that moment. And another piece of our work is providing referrals. So the Counseling Center sees students on a short-term basis, which is typical for all college counseling centers nationally. So typically that looks like around about an average of 6 sessions, could be less or more than that. Sometimes students call us who've already had a very successful experience in therapy. And it's been maybe like a longer term therapy. And if students are looking for that, or if that's the best fit for them, then it's our responsibility to make sure that we help connect them to a more longer term therapy, or maybe a more specialized therapy, depending on what their concerns are. Somewhere in the Chicago area, that's a good fit and at a cost that they can afford. We do work with some sliding scale agencies, so it's not necessary to have insurance in order to get good services. And then we're also always looking to make sure that where we refer students feels like a good match, where they'll be understood, whether that's around cultural identities, or it could be just students wanting to know that who they're working with has some familiarity with, like the grad student lifestyle or college student issues. So that's kind of an overview of what we do. As I said, we're just sort of doing that all remotely right now.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing. I did not know about some of the services that UCS provides, and I'm definitely just thankful that UCS is still a service that DePaul students can use. And so getting into that, what are some reasons that students would seek help from your office, if you'd like to speak on a couple of things?
Sure. I think what our statistics say is that the three top reasons that students identify as coming to the counseling center most often are depression. Actually, anxiety is number one, depression is number two, and then relationship concerns. And that can look like, breakups or difficulties in interpersonal or romantic relationships. But also, I think a lot of students come to talk about family concerns within their family. I think especially right now, while a lot of people are residing with family, we're maybe seeing even a little bit more of that than usual. People love their families a lot, but it's a lot for any of us to be, living with a lot of people under one roof and whatever. Sometimes that's complicated. So those are the three main reasons, but I think a variety of other reasons could be students with a trauma background, students who've experienced abuse either recently or during childhood growing up, sexual assault or partner violence. Sometimes we see students for those reasons. And I don't know that students seek us out explicitly for this, but it often comes up in treatment, and that's experiences of oppression, racism, microaggressions. And so often students are coming to us, I think, particularly in this political climate, maybe with initial other concerns. And then as things unfold, that's certainly something that comes up that we're hoping that we provide support for. I think those are some examples, I would say, of some of the main reasons that we do see students.
Thank you. The next question is, what's one myth that you want to bust about seeking help?
It's a good one. Let's see. I think one of the main things I would say would be you don't have to have a problem to come to counseling. And so I think that students, like often I'll be with a student and they'll say like, well, is my problem bad enough that I should really be here? Or am I taking up a slot that another student that's in crisis needs? And the answer to that is, please, by all means, come to counseling. We're there to help people with sort of a range of things. And sometimes students come to the counseling center because they're seeking just to work on some personal growth or development, some personal goals, maybe like some self-exploration. I think college is such a great opportunity. You're in classes and you start to wonder about some thought-provoking questions about yourself or how those things apply to you or what kind of person you want to be in the world. And so, we love having conversations with students about those things. So I think that's probably one of the things students maybe don't seek us out for as much as they could. What else was I going to say about other myths? I think also, I don't know if this is a common myth, but I think maybe one of the barriers that keeps students from coming is this idea that if you come to therapy, you're going to get a diagnosis or you're going to get labeled in some way. And at the counseling center, we don't even use diagnostic language, or we don't diagnose students. But I think our theoretical view is that most of the things students are coming to see us for are situational circumstances. Versus, so in other words, the problem isn't that you're, depressed, it's that you're dealing with a lot of stressful circumstances that would cause any normal human being to feel not at their best. And so I think we want students to know that if you come to us, we're going to try the best we can to understand you in your context and your circumstances, not to sort of label people as having a problem just because life is hard sometimes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. That's, the first common myth is definitely a big common myth. And thank you for saying that barrier too, because I think when I remember stepping onto DePaul and learning about UCS, before I worked at HPW, I had the same, like I believe same thing. And then when I got to learn more about UCS, like I was like, wow, really allowed me to also think of like, where did I get that from? Like, is that from the media or is that from, the way that I was raised? So I really think that's a comment.
Oh, good. I'm glad that was helpful.
Yeah. What is one piece of advice for students, like freshmen, so anyone that's new to the DePaul community that you like to say?
I think that my advice would be to seek support sooner than later. And one thing that my impression of working with DePaul students over all these years is they're super resilient. They have a super strong work ethic, and they're balancing and juggling a lot of responsibilities, family responsibilities, sometimes helping support the family, sometimes living at home, and helping with extended family member responsibilities or childcare, as well as maybe balancing a full-time job. So that's a lot. And I think students often expect themselves like, well, I should be able to handle all of this. And so I think that can sometimes end up getting in the way of students feeling like it's okay to seek support, or, that much stuff on one person's plate is not really manageable for anybody. No wonder you're feeling sort of beyond your means. And so that's, I think, one of the things that I hope for is that students will seek us out sooner than later. And not just us, but I think that Paul does a good job of providing a range of supports in student affairs. So whether it's reaching out to us or Office for Multicultural Students and Scholars or Success, and the Center for Students with Disabilities, also your office as well, Health Promotion and Wellness. So and then also, I think faculty at DePaul, so reaching out to professors. And I think doing that sooner in the quarter rather than waiting until you're in crisis or you feel like, oh, I didn't show up for the midterm, now there's a problem. What I've learned from DePaul faculty after working here for the number of years I have is I find DePaul faculty, like in particular compared to other universities that I've worked at, to be very invested in the student as a whole person and very interested in the student as a whole person and wanting that person to succeed. So I've rarely called up a professor on behalf of a student and had them say like, well, I'm just here for academics. That's not my bag. More often I have professors say, oh my, I had no idea the student was struggling. I wish they would have approached me sooner. What can I do to help? So I think our professors overall are very compassionate and they're wanting students to approach them and let them know. Even if you think that you're going to do okay in the quarter, if you have some sort of circumstance you just want to give a professor a heads up about in case you need flexibility. I think it's hard to be vulnerable and have the courage to sort of put something about yourself out there like that. But I think it can be helpful in creating a little bit of a safety net or some flexibility in case you need it.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I think that this advice is really important to you now during this time where, classes are virtual and it's really easy to not build that relationship that you have with not only students, but also faculty and staff and offices. And that's something I've learned too, just being an undergrad. I learned that college was also about learning about myself and knowing what I need. So that I definitely remember like using support like before something happened, and that really impacted me greatly. It really helped. And then I also wanted to mention, I think there's also this myth that DePaul faculty and staff like do not want to help students, but I've learned that every DePaul faculty and staff member that I've met like really wants to help students, even if they're professors or even if they work at an office that has nothing to do with health promotion and wellness. They still want to help and provide support and resources. And that's something that I definitely love about DePaul.
Yes, me too.
We have a question from Katrina. She's our health promotion coordinator. And she says, we definitely echo that life is hard right now. What are some specific strategies that you would recommend from a counselor's perspective for DePaul students?
Uh-huh. Great question, Katrina. I think we can all certainly relate, myself included. Um, these are just extenuating circumstances that I think as human beings, we're not really wired for. First of all, we're not psychologically prepared to suddenly have to live this way. But also, I think we're not wired to live in this sort of with such lack of clarity about what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way that can feel pretty disconnected in terms of like our bodies aren't in the same rooms with each other right now. I think there's a whole way that human beings create that's neuroceptive or physiological, that when we're not in the same space, we can't pick up on those things. So I think that this probably sounds trite, like everybody else is saying the same thing, but I think doing everything you can to stay connected to the people you're already connected to. I myself find myself thinking, well, I don't have time to connect with these friends right now because I'm just trying to homeschool my kid and keep my job afloat. But it's really taking a toll, that then you get depleted and then there's not enough gas in the tank to sort of do the things that you need to do. So I think that that's maintaining that human connection in any way possible is important. And also, I think maybe that's even connecting in new ways. So I know that the Office of Student Involvement is trying to find lots of ways for new students to virtually connect with each other. That might seem like, oh, that's awkward, or how are they going to do that? But, what I'm hearing when I'm working with individual students is they're all sitting at home feeling the same exact way, which is, I don't know anybody, or I can't just start up casual conversations with classmates like I used to. And so I think even though these new ways of relating can feel artificial, I think sort of having the courage to step in there and try is really important. So the longer isolation goes on, the worse of a toll that it takes. I think other strategies would also be things like, this also sounds trite, but sort of limiting how much social media that you're on. I think always as a therapist, I recommend this. And one of those reasons is because people tend to represent themselves as their very best, their very best possible image of themselves, which is not real, right? And so then we can often end up on social media comparing how we're doing in reality with how other people look like they're doing on the surface. And I think that can often lead us to feel like I'm not doing a good enough job of holding it together, when really probably many people's profiles that you're looking at are having the same difficulties internally. So I think it's really important to keep that in mind, as well as just some of the other. I know I can get really flooded and worked up even reading hours and hours of political things online as well. And that's super important to be informed. But I think that can tip over into sort of depleting yourself psychologically at some point when you're getting really flooded. So I think those are just some things to keep an eye on.
Yeah, thank you so much. And talking a little bit about self-care, what is your favorite way to practice self-care?
Oh, let's see. Well, I'm trying to do everything I can right now to spend time outside in a safe way. So, for example, as much of my work as I can do sort of on my porch, surrounded by my plants, or taking a walk and sitting on a park bench and doing some of my work. I'm trying to do as much as I can about that now. And part of that has to do with, I think, trying to be able to save up and savor almost like a sensory experience that I'm going to need maybe a little further on into the winter. And I did spend some time in Ohio with my mom in sort of a more rural environment, and we spent a lot of time in nature there. And so one of the things that I sort of committed to do when I came back to Chicago, I feel like that's a lot harder to access, but I'm trying to prioritize driving to a forest preserve, even if it's in the suburbs, or, planning my day so that I can make sure I have time on Saturday to do something like that. Because I know for myself, just physiologically, I feel different in my body with my blood pressure and all the stress and being able to breathe when I take in nature and sort of get out of my little tiny COVID bubble that I'm sort of held captive in for the moment.
Yeah, I definitely agree. That's something I've been doing too, getting outside more, and just taking walks is something that I find really valuable because sometimes you could feel suffocated in your COVID bubble. And my last question for you is, what is your favorite part about your job?
Oh, um, I'd like to say two things. One is just the variety of students here at DePaul that I get an opportunity to get to know is so enriching for me. Um, students from different cultures, students who've had backgrounds different than myself, students who've had different family makeup than myself. I feel like I've learned at least as much from this job as I try to, impart to others. It's like I don't know who gets more out of it, myself or the clients. So I feel like it's a real unique privilege and opportunity to cross paths with a lot of people in life that maybe I wouldn't otherwise if I weren't in this profession or at this university. And then the other thing I'd say is just how inspired I feel by getting to know students in the individual. Students come to us with the most vulnerable private things that I think it takes a lot of courage to share. I think students can sometimes have a lot of shame about what they're revealing. And my perspective as I'm sitting on the other side of that is seeing how much strength and resilience there is in someone as they're sharing those things with me. Maybe something that they're looking at as sort of a deficit within themselves, I see as a real survival skill or a real strength. And so a lot of my job, I think, is just students already come to us with a ton of strengths. And sometimes my job is just sort of shining a spotlight on that in a way that the student can maybe come to reframe those things for themselves, about themselves. And people, have most people in this world have like a real good heart and a real good soul. And I think right now we're living in a time where we don't get to see that about individuals, or that's certainly not what's being emphasized or portrayed. And so I think that's also real heartening to me when I'm able to sit with students who have the courage to sort of open up and show a little bit more of what's in there. And I think it helps all of us to communicate more with the humanity in each other when we're able to show each other those parts.
Wow. Thank you so much. That is all that I have. But if anyone has some last burning questions, feel free to comment for Stacy or for any questions about HPW. But thank you so much, Stacy. There's some great, great tips that I will take, and I know that someone else will take, so that we can take care of Paul and really taking care of ourselves as well. So thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thanks,
Yeah.
Christine. It was a lovely experience talking to you, and we hope to see some of these students. And also just want to wish everybody a good year at DePaul. I know these are very hard times, so be kind to yourself, be gentle to yourself, and know that you're certainly not alone. We're all really struggling. So I wish everybody the best.
Yes, thank you so much. And so the last thing I just want to say for everyone that is watching, stay in touch with us. Follow our Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. Here's our email, and it's also our phone number. And again, if you forgot to check in, please feel free to check in. So you see the link down below. I'll have that up for a couple of seconds. But yeah, is there any other last things you'd like to say, Stacy, before we end?
Maybe one other point I wanted to make sure that I made. Do we have a minute or two? Okay, great. I'm glad you asked. So I think the other thing I wanted to mention was that just to emphasize that at the Counseling Center, we want to make sure that all students um, can feel like they have confidence when they come to us, that they will feel understood. We know, especially for students from some historically marginalized populations, there are very real historical reasons, perhaps not to trust the mental health system. And so I guess I'm just wanting students to know that we're always doing our own work, both as individuals inside within the center in our training, as well as in our personal lives, to try to be anti-racist and to try to be evolving in our own self-reflection and identifying our own biases. And also in our hiring practices. That's probably one of the primary things that we look for both in our hiring and in our interns is cultural competence, people that have cultural competence and also that have sort of a real investment in social justice issues. So I'm hoping in sharing that, maybe that's reducing a barrier a bit and helping students to maybe feel like, we want students to feel like if they come to the counseling center, everyone on our staff is trained and is working hard to be able to understand the experience that they've had and to be respectful of that. So just wanting to mention that up front as well, Christine. Thanks for giving me the chance to kind of make that final point.
Yes. So everyone, we hope that you have a great day. Remember to DePaul. Bye.
Bye.